Imagine that you're told that your beloved science center has to be closed, not because it burned down or collapsed, but because it supposedly had a leaky roof. You'd expect, at worst, that somebody would patch it up and move on. Now imagine that instead the government says, nah, let's shut down the entire thing, spend hundreds of millions to rebuild it somewhere else, and while we're at it, spend $2 million to change the name of the LRT station out front. That's not a dream. That's the reality in Ontario in 2025. Thanks in part to a new Blog2 article published on June 13th, we now have confirmation of what transit watchers and critics feared, which is that renaming the Science Centre station to Don Valley Station will cost up to $2 million. Now I want to make this clear. It does not say in the article that it will cost that much. In fact, it tells us that Metrolinx will not disclose the cost of it, but instead claim that it will just be included in the billions of dollars that the Eglinton LRT has already overrun its budget. I'll give you two guesses as to why they won't give us a number, but you'll only need one. If you look it up on the internet, and I would certainly invite you to do so yourself if you're interested, but just so you understand, the estimated cost of renaming Downsview Station to Shepherd West costed between $1 and $2 million, and the estimated cost of renaming Dundas Station downtown is upwards of $6 million, so you get the idea. But so why does it cost so much? Because people mostly don't understand this. It isn't just a few stickers and a coat of paint. According to Metrolinx, this involves all of the following things. Firstly, the changing of the station's signage across the entire line. Secondly, updating digital infrastructure such as apps, maps, announcements, control systems, etc. Then thirdly, there's the printing and distributing of new wayfinding maps. Fourthly, there's the modifying of TTC assets that show the connection between the Eglinton LRT and all of the other lines. Fifthly, there's accessibility updates, including Braille signage. Then, lastly, there's the administrative costs, like system database updates, staff training, and contractor changes. And here's the kicker. This LRT station hasn't even opened yet. This means that we're not even talking about fixing a mistake. We're talking about a deliberate decision to launch the station with one name, only to spend millions changing it before a single rider even taps onto the platform. This is money being spent not on transit service, not on accessibility, not on faster travel, but on semantics. Let's rewind to the justification for this name change. Doug Ford's government is shutting down the Ontario Science Centre, allegedly because it's crumbling and not safe. Well, that's misleading. The truth is that while the building would have needed work, like every public building older than 50 years, it is not condemned, not structurally unsafe, and absolutely repairable according to most experts you would ask. So what was the most cited issue? Well, the roof. Infrastructure Ontario's 2022 Condition Assessment Report deferred maintenance costs of about $20 to $40 million, but this figure included every long-term repair imaginable, from plumbing to HVAC to parking lot infrastructure, etc., etc. So, then how much would it have costed to actually fix the problematic section of the roof? Well, reports put it at just between $2 and $5 million, with some internal documents suggesting it could have been done for as little as $2.2 million. In other words, for about the same price as changing the name of an unopened LRT station, Ontario could have kept one of the province's most cherished cultural institutions operating safely for years to come. But they didn't. Instead, they shut it down overnight in June of 2024, evicted staff, and are now pretending the place never existed, starting with erasing its name from the transit system. If that sounds odd, it's because it is. Let's break down what's really happening here. The Ford government wants to redevelop the Don Mills and Eglinton site into a new transit-oriented community with condos and mixed-use buildings, many of them privately developed. Keeping the Science Centre on its site complicates the government's plans. They need the land cleared, and fast. Now that might sound conspiracy theory-like, but to the extent that you could call Doug Ford a real premier, there is the absence of any real transparency here. Perhaps if Doug Ford was more forthcoming and transparent, people would maybe have less reason to be cynical. By declaring the Science Centre beyond saving, they make the redevelopment look justified, even though engineers and former staff say it could have easily been repaired. Meanwhile, the replacement Science Centre at the Ontario Place won't open until 2030 or later. It'll be half the size and will be less transit accessible for kids, schools, and families in the inner suburbs. If you think about it, with the opening of the Eglinton LRT, this should make accessibility to be less of a problem and therefore less of an excuse. But no, the Eglinton LRT and Ontario line is going to be fantastic for commuting around the city, and at the same time the Science Centre has to be moved to a more accessible location. This is insane. This is the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. Just keep in mind that this is all coming from the man who tells us that the buck stops with him. And do you know who is not making these decisions? Metrolinx, the transit agency that we all like to blame for our transit problems. In the transit planning world, do you know what they call this? BS. The LRT station, which was going to be a major access point for the original Science Centre, became a political liability, so now they spent $2 million to rebrand it. This is bureaucratic gaslighting, but with a glossy new font on the wall, and you can take that literally at this point. It's important to note that this is not even a transit station yet. The Eglinton line is a light rapid transit, or LRT line, designed to operate more like the SkyTrain in Vancouver or the REM in Montreal than traditional subways like Line 1 or Line 2 in Toronto. But whether it's LRT or subway, the infrastructure costs and public perception are similar. These stations are designed to be long-lasting, highly integrated with the city's transit fabric, and named for permanence. Changing a station's name is not just a clerical task. It ripples out through every map, every transfer point, every audio announcement on every train. And in this case, the timing is absurd. This is an LRT station that the public hasn't even used yet. So then why was this not just opened with the correct name in the first place? Well, because when the Ontario line was being planned, the Ontario Science Centre was never supposed to close. That decision came years later, with no public consultation, by the way, and based on questionable premises, to say the least. The Ontario Science Centre was more than a building. It's an institution that defined the Flemington Park and Thorncliffe Park area. It was a source of pride, a tourist destination, and a rare example of world-class architecture that served the suburbs. Now that's being replaced by a condo proposal. Renaming the station Don Valley is supposed to reflect the intersection it sits near, but let's be real, it's about scrubbing the Science Centre's name for the public imagination. This is not a naming clarification. It's erasing what the Doug Ford administration has done. Let's be clear about that. And to add insult to injury, this renaming is happening in a part of the city that's already underserved by major institutions. Shutting down the Science Centre and rebranding it the station only deepens that inequality. This entire station is the definition of performative governance. A station is being renamed before it opens. A science museum or center, whatever you'd like to call it, is being shut down instead of being maintained. Public dollars are flowing not to services but to optics. So then what is the real message to Ontarians? Well, that it's cheaper to erase history than to invest in it. Wow, I don't remember hearing that during the election campaign. Doug Ford's government could have repaired the roof and preserved a vital public space. Instead, they're betting that a flashy waterfront and a new digital map will distract us long enough to forget what we've lost. But hopefully we won't. Doug Ford can do all the hand-waving and gesturing he wants to, but each time we will board a train at Don Valley Station, on the Ontario line or the Eglinton LRT, we will know exactly what used to be there, even if the sign no longer says it. I hope that you liked the video. If so, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed and want to be notified of new videos that are released, please click on the Art Toronto button here. This is the video that I would recommend for you to watch next, and I'm sure that you're going to love it. Here's the playlist for all of the latest in transit news and views that you're going to find very informative and interesting. And finally, here is the latest video. Thanks for watching and happy transiting.